Coming up on Headline Humboldt, we interview Dr. Veronica Yank from the Rural Dementia Caregivers Project to discuss how rural residents face enormous challenges when taking care of their ill family members. We'll find out how they can get help. Also, KEET contributor Eric Black brings us an update in the ongoing saga surrounding embattled Arcata Councilman Brett Watson as it relates to the upcoming city election. Coming up now on Headline Humboldt. From our studio atop Humboldt Hill, this is Headline Humboldt. I'm James Falk. Thanks for joining us. If you're still on the fence about which local candidates in this upcoming election you want to support, we've got your back. Over the past 2 weeks, we've hosted 2 League of Women's Voters candidate forums in the race for Humboldt County Clerk, Recorder, and Registrar of Voters, as well as for the Arcata City Council. Those events have been posted to YouTube and are now available for members of the public to peruse at their leisure. This next week will feature 2 more forums. On Monday at 7 p.m., we'll host candidates in the race for Arcata City Council, starting at 7, and the following Wednesday, also at 7, we'll host the candidates seeking to join the Fortuna City Council. There's few better ways to gauge a candidate's fitness for office than seeing them live on stage, wrestling with real-time questions put to them by their own constituents. The Humboldt County League of Women Voters has long proven itself invaluable in our local elections, and it's a privilege for KEET to partner with them and help voters make informed decisions. It's become almost cliche these days to note the importance of elections. Each and every time it seems like we're saying our way of life is on the ballot. But given the stakes, such seeming hyperbole is the actual truth. There are forces at play in American politics right now that would sacrifice most, if not all, our democratic norms in order to secure power for their preferred political party. The only backstop this country has, the only security separating our nation from the chaos of unrelenting and division and manipulation, are the voters. Take the time to get informed, think critically, analyze not only what the candidates say, but also what they do. If we all treat the act of voting as a sacred obligation and an investment in the future health and stability of our country, I have faith that the collective wisdom of ordinary Americans will see us through these challenging times, no matter what party or candidate you vote for. Tonight's interview with Dr. Veronica Yank of the Rural Dementia Caregivers Project is a program that is being deployed to help support those in rural communities who've taken up the responsibility of caring for loved ones who suffer from Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. As Dr. Yank will explain, providing such care can be extremely taxing. So the program has developed a workshop that helps caregivers find support and develop the skills necessary to care for both their patients and themselves. I'm here with Dr. Veronica Yank of the Rural Dementia Caregiver Project. So can you talk to me a little bit about what the program is and why it's so important for people in rural areas?
Yeah, well, we know that rural communities in general and certainly rural caregivers of people living with dementia are typically unable to access as many resources or access as easily resources as folks living in urban areas. And so our project is designed to help support rural caregivers of loved ones living with dementia, both in California and other rural communities throughout the country. So we've designed a workshop that both educates these family members or friends about dementia and the kinds of things that are happening to their loved one's brain and things that they might want to learn about how to better support that person or plan for the future. And then the workshop also helps teach the caregivers how to better, support themselves, care for their own health, manage the things they need to do to stay healthy in order to, fulfill their life and all the roles they may play in their life, as well as continue to provide care to their person who's living with dementia.
Could you describe for us what are some of the emotional challenges that caregivers face when they're often the only emotional and real support for patients? What kinds of challenges do they come up against?
Yeah, exactly, James. Thank you for asking that question, because what we know from the evidence and then just the stories from these caregivers is that they're often highly stressed out, in some cases become clinically anxious or depressed even, and can also be sleep deprived, among other things. We also know on the flip side that many caregivers, experience more positive aspects of caregiving, so may take pride in being able to, to help their family member or friend. But it really is kind of the more the more challenging emotions and other challenges they face that we wanted to help target with this workshop that we're offering for free to rural caregivers.
Yeah. Is there, I mean, one of the things that comes up a lot here is that there's not a lot of money behind taking care of family members in terms of, whether you're a home health care worker or if you can contract with the county for that. Do you guys talk about the financial pressures at all and what can be done to ameliorate that, or is that outside the?
We do, and there are some content areas within the workshop and in particular the resources section with some link outs and readings, because you're exactly right. It can break the bank to be a caregiver, whether for a family member or friend, or as you mentioned, the paid caregivers, I in my humble opinion, are woefully underpaid.
Absolutely.
Right, for what
minimum
they
wage
do.
a lot of the time around here. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Let alone all of the free, hours of support that the family members or friends supply to their person. And so on in different areas of my work, I certainly advocate for changes in that, and hopefully even at the federal, state, and local levels, those changes will come into place. But it is part of the reason we're doing the project and study, because if we can show that this workshop does help caregivers in the ways that it appears to from the participants so far, there are grant options for local area agencies on aging to get grants to pay for delivery of this workshop to folks. Circling back to your original question though, yeah, trying to find, we have stories of people spending down savings, so then their person qualifies for certain, whether in-home support services or out-of-home support services, that kind of thing. Yeah. But for your listeners who, may not be interested in learning more about this particular workshop, trying to work with folks at their area agency on aging. There's also an elder care locator online that links up to some governmental information that may say what is available in local areas. But we also know that rural areas often are woefully under-supported, even in those sorts of ways.
Yeah. One of the things I remember hearing years ago, and I assume it's still the case, if not worse, although maybe we've gotten out of the bubble, but there was a lot of talk about how it's an aging population that we have, and that the demands that we are facing when taking care of, the elderly are only going to get worse. Are we still facing that crunch? And how much is dementia care a part of that?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Current estimates are that there are 6 million adults living with dementia in the United States right now. And because of the aging baby boomers, that's only going to increase. And so the pressure on, the country and the communities that we all live in is going to be to develop different modes of support, because it's just not sustainable right now. So you're absolutely right. And the other thing I'll say, so out of the current 6 million people living with dementia, approximately 200,000 of those are younger, so younger than 65. And I find that people sometimes don't know that, because there are many different types of dementia. And I think a lot of people know about Alzheimer's, the older Alzheimer's type, which often comes up when people are in their 70s or 80s. But there are definitely folks who get dementia earlier, and that's even in some cases more challenging for them and their families because it's more unexpected.
I know that for a lot of folks who are, taking care of people with dementia, or it can be an emotional roller coaster. And there sometimes comes a point where it's no longer healthy for the caregiver to engage. And at that point, people start thinking about a home. Um, I mean, it's sort of a weird question, but how do you advise folks to kind of approach that? I mean, keeping someone home obviously allows them to connect with their past and to maintain a little bit of dignity, but then, you have to balance your own well-being. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I guess part of the way I think about it is I think about dementia and dementia caregiving as a journey. And part of that journey is getting informed about what might lie ahead and trying to prepare for it. And for many people, that can mean, out of home care. And so, but I find caregivers are so busy, just trying to survive in the here and now, as you say, with all of these pressures and other things, that they sometimes, have a really challenging time planning for the future. Mm-hmm. So along that whole arc, sometimes people start out and they don't need their care partner, their person living with dementia might not need that much help in the home, but we know it's a progressive disease. And so then they might be looking at getting hopefully some in-home care help, maybe some equipment to make sure they're safe in the home, changing the home environment, maybe respite care. So in some cases, people have an area, a senior center or another place where personnel are trained, maybe to help their person, their wife, their husband, their mom, their brother, have a few areas where they're occupied and doing things that are stimulating while the caregiver can go off and do the things they need to do. So that's respite care, but the person with dementia then returns to the home after those several hours or whatnot. And then there's assisted living. And sometimes assisted living, it's not that they don't have nursing care services in assisted living, but maybe if it's a spouse couple, maybe they would decide to move to assisted living together. Or maybe it would just be the individual with dementia, but it's early enough that they only need, modest assistance. And then, of course, there's the more, I think what you were referring to maybe was, more kind of nursing home level of care when folks become more bedbound or, need really intensive support. And that's a good option.
The options that you just listed are, I think, complex, and it just shows you that there's a continuum of choices. It's not just are they in a home or not. It's like there's various degrees of help and full-time takeover of care.
Exactly.
So can we talk a little bit about what the workshop entails and why it's beneficial for someone who is a rural caregiver to attend?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, so it's a 6-week online workshop. And I'll say about the online access that it can be done on any sort of device, computer, tablet, or smartphone. You do need to have an internet access, but it doesn't require broadband because it doesn't use, for example, Zoom or streaming. So and we know that's important for rural folks who might not have broadband. So anyway, 6 weeks online. The caregivers participate with about 25 other caregivers. It can be from maybe the local Humboldt area, but honestly, it's open to rural caregivers from around the country. So, and people interact. So they do lessons of the week, each of the 6 weeks. There are generally paired lessons, one on a self-care skill. So it might be managing those difficult emotions, anger, resentment, sadness, related to caregiving, or healthy exercise, making your own doctor's appointments. So there's that self-care part, lesson of the week. And then there's a caregiving skill lesson of the week. So learning about the brain of somebody with Alzheimer's, how do you set up your home for safety? Planning for the future, so advanced care planning, legal planning, financial planning. So those roll out, and you can do lessons in your own private learning center. There's reading. Sometimes there videos or exercises to listen to. You get a workbook in the mail that you can keep. And if you're not online, you can read, about kind of your lessons, even without being on a computer or smartphone. And then paired with all of that are these spaces where the caregivers support each other, interact, and ask questions on what we call discussion boards. So I guess the closest to it is it's kind of like Facebook, but not really. But you can have discussion threads. So you can caregivers post their questions for other caregivers. Like, I'm really having a hard time with, shower or bath time. Like, my person, refuses to shower. What tips do you have for me on that? And they offer each other advice and support. But it happens what we call asynchronously. So it means like somebody, in Humboldt maybe logs on at 10 at night, because that's when their person has gone to bed, and they put a question like that. And then, somebody in Texas or in Florida, wakes up 6 hours ahead, 2 hours ahead, 3 hours ahead, 2 hours ahead. And they read the post and they reply, in the middle of the night for the Humboldt person. So they kind of converse back and forth and off each other's support, because that's another thing we know about caregivers. Are often really lonely and feel isolated, and that a lot of people don't understand what they're going through. And so, some of the most positive comments have been about that aspect of it, of the workshop as well.
Absolutely. So now, if someone wants to get involved, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, so we have multiple ways. We do have a website, and it has lots of pages and lots of information, and even links out to, this little screening survey that just confirms they're a caregiver and they're in the United States. And that address online is Caregiver Project, all one word, caregiverproject.ucsf.edu. And then there's a toll-free call number that actually goes to a human, one of my colleagues, Elizabeth. So if she doesn't pick up, she will call you back, Elizabeth. The Elizabeth number is 833-634-0603. And then we even have an email address, which is caregiverproject@ucsf.edu. So call us, ask us questions, email us. The pages online also have frequently asked questions. So, but some people prefer to talk to an actual human about their questions. Some people prefer to read about it.
Right?
Yeah, I know, right?
So just a couple quick questions before we round it out. There's research being done as part of this, right? So what is UCSF hoping to get out of it as an academic institution?
Yeah, well, so we absolutely want to one, learn about whether the workshop helps caregivers. 2, how we can make it even better. So what is missing from it? So in the version 2.0, we can add the things that people feel are missing. And 3, then using all that information, disseminate it, make it available even beyond the conclusion of the study part of the project. And so people should know that we do ask them to complete just online surveys. They're, the information is kept confidential, and it's really about those questions or those goals I said, is it helping them? And they get paid for the survey part. They do get paid $20 for each survey they complete, because we know their time is valuable. So, yeah. And
then I would ask the same question of you. You are a doctor, obviously accomplished. Why this particular field? Why has this drawn your interest?
It's both for personal and professional reasons. I'll start with the personal. In my extended family, people have experienced and then passed away from dementia. And so being a part of that and watching my parents care for, and also not understand what was happening to my grandfather. When I became a doctor and sort of looked back on that experience, it was more clear to me what was going on, and that we completely could have used help and support. And then as a health professional, as a primary care doctor, just seeing what I see, as a primary care doctor, I often care for both the person with dementia and maybe their spouse or, their family member. And so I see what both parties are going through. And part of what I saw was just the need for caregiver training and support, honestly, and that the people who lacked that were just at their wits' end in some cases, and their health was suffering. And so I said, I need to do something about this.
Yeah. Is there anything you think I forgot or that you'd like to include that I didn't ask about?
Oh, wow. Just that we are continuing to run workshops. Once we have enough people, we launch a new workshop. So please come. We've had a lot of people from the Humboldt area and then other rural areas in California, and I love that. So come on, come on down. We hope it will work for you.
In the interest of transparency, we'd like to point out that the UCSF and the Rural Dementia Caregivers Project are in fact KEET sponsors. We'll be right back after this short break.
Black America.
Slaves were freed, but African Americans had not become truly equal citizens.
Organizing for change. And Black life. Black joy.
Creating these spaces or enclaves that allow us to feel good about ourselves and good in the world, even if the world isn't good.
Georgia's election probe is advancing with new search warrants.
Michael Flynn's whole life is really a story of culture war from start to finish.
They're godless, they're soulless.
General Flynn, he's a living martyr.
This idea that this was spiritual warfare, it's not even an undertone.
The battle for the soul of America, using the church as a tool.
In collaboration with the Associated Press.
What are you fighting for?
God bless you, God bless America. Thank you very much.
As election ballots began arriving in the mail last weekend, some Arcata voters are weighing one candidate's personal behavior versus his politics. Headline Humboldt's Eric Black reports.
In 2016, some voters who disliked Donald Trump's behavior voted for him anyway, because Trump planned to appoint judges who opposed constitutional abortion rights. In June, those voters felt vindicated. Arcata voter Daniel Bixler dislikes Brett Watson's behavior. In May, a City of Arcata investigator concluded the city council member sexually harassed a city employee.
This is the second time I've asked Councilman Brett Watson to resign, and I'm asking you to immediately pass some kind of ruling that allows for impeachment when this happens. And I also urge you to begin testing for illegal drugs if you're an elected city council person.
But just 3 months after demanding Watson's resignation, Bixler tacitly endorsed Watson's re-election, writing, quote, "As much as I do not want Brett Watson to serve on city council, it is much more important to preserve community-based development and core Arcata values than to not have someone I really don't like serve me in office." Bixler's catchphrases referred to Watson's populist objection to allowing 5 to 8-story apartment buildings in the so-called Gateway on Arcata's west side. For example, in August, Watson split with other council members in supporting critics' demands for a high-rise citizens task force.
I'm never going to assume that just because I was elected and I'm sitting up here that I know better than what a bunch of educated, hardworking, involved community members, have put together. The majority of our constituents are terrified that this project is going to ruin the city that they love so much.
Earlier this month, Watson's personally hired investigator concluded there's insufficient evidence to prove Watson abused his power. So Watson continues campaigning, one of only 2 candidates for the 2 open council seats who is both eligible to vote on the Gateway plan and has committed to maintaining the current 4-story cap. That means Arcata's high-rise opponents may vote for Watson. That is, if policies trump behavior. Eric Black, headline Humboldt, Arcata.
That was punny. All 6 Arcata City Council candidates will debate the issues Monday night here on KEET. Tune in. That 90-minute forum will begin at 7 o'clock. Thanks, Eric. The ongoing documentary project, Homeless in Humboldt, will offer a free premiere of its 3rd episode, Angela and William's Story, at 7 p.m. on October 26th at the Minor Theater in Arcata. The documentary series, Homeless in Humboldt, is the culmination of hundreds of hours of field work from the documentary team, which began production in September of 2020 during the pandemic. Cal Poly Humboldt graduates Gabe Kim, Valentina Demas, Rachel Marty, and Skylar Gavin make up the team and have been on this very program. The multi-episode documentary follows the lives of homeless men and women from the Humboldt area. The first 3 documentary episodes will be publicly available on the project's website at homelessinhumboldt.wordpress.com. After the film, at the showing, there will be a discussion with Angela and William along with the filmmakers, and they will also share progress on the 4th installment of the series, which will look at solutions. California, believe this or not, is sending money directly to millions of residents to help with rising costs and high gas prices. The payments, which started going out October 7th, range from $200 to $1,050, depending on income and other factors. About 18 million payments will be distributed over the next few months, benefiting up to 23 million Californians. The cash payouts are part of a June budget deal. To be eligible, you need to have filed a 2020 California tax return by October 15th of last year, 2021. People who didn't file taxes for 2020, including some seniors and disabled people, will be left out. People who can be claimed as dependents for tax purposes won't get their own payments. The payments also won't go to married or domestic partners who have an adjusted gross income of over $500,000, and the same goes for individuals who have an adjusted gross income over $250,000. You also had to be a California resident for at least 6 months of 2020 and be a resident when the payment is ultimately issued. That's it for this week. I quickly want to remind folks that you can go to any podcast provider, any of the major ones, Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts, any of those, and look for our 2 podcasts. One is What's Wrong with Humboldt and How Can We Fix It? And that's with me and Linda Stansberry, a local area reporter, and we talk about sort of the profound issues facing Humboldt County for the day. And also Crossing the Bar, which is where I examine local history and the state of our community through, economics and sort of folklore. Anyway, thank you for watching. Stay tuned. Stay informed.